was delayed at the podium.
Well,
that's redundant.
Why do you just establish a vote?
Submitting and delayed.
I need to call the roll.
yeah. We do have a quorum present. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll, please?
Hancock.
Here.
Hancock here. Walters. Desaulniers.
Here.
Desaulniers here. Liu. Here. Liu here. Strickland.
Here.
Strickland here.
All right. Welcome, Senator Kehoe.
Thank you, Senator Hancock, and thank you, members. This is regarding SCA 12, Emergency Fire Services funding options. And members, I just have an opening statement that's a tiny bit longer than I usually speak because this is such an important bill and I think it's extremely timely. I've invited some of our fire chiefs to join us today, and I'll be introducing them in a moment. We really appreciate you taking the time to come up on such short notice. As you know, members, for the last 5 years, California has experienced annual wildfires that have burned thousands of acres. Thousands of homes have burned to the ground, and businesses and other structures. And also, these fires have resulted in far too many deaths, including those of 5 firefighters near Banning a year and a half ago. San Diego, Santa Barbara, L.A., Orange County, Ventura, and many other parts of the state, including Northern California, have been greatly affected. These fires not only result in millions of dollars in property damage and tragic disruption to people's lives, they also cost the state hundreds of millions of dollars annually. In fact, over the past 2 years alone, California has spent close to $1 billion, that's $1 billion, fighting fires. We can no longer simply rely on our emergency services funding to simply be there anytime we need it. Nor can local government be left without the ability to provide emergency service funding as we here in Sacramento consider a wide variety of cuts to services to balance our budget. But we all do expect firefighters and first responders to be there every time. These brave men and women deserve our thanks and recognition, but they also deserve much more. They deserve the tools and the equipment necessary to be prepared for the next time they're called upon to risk their lives and serve the public. That is, we must ensure firefighting in California has adequate voter-approved funding, and that's what this SCA takes a step towards that. Several local jurisdictions have tried to increase their emergency funding through local ballot measures, and the chiefs are going to explain more about that. But they have come up short, missing the currently required 2/3 vote, sometimes just by 2 or 3 percentage points or even less. In fact, last November in San Diego County, we had a ballot measure that would have levied a $52 parcel fee in order to create a regional fire protection agency, this consolidation that our local departments have been working on for years. The proposition failed, but it received almost 63.5% of the vote. It was just 2.5 percentage points shy of voter approval. SCA 12 provides a way for local governments and special districts to seek funding with voter approval. Funding that would be used specifically for purchasing fire and law enforcement emergency equipment for the protection of public health and welfare, and would also reduce the state's share of bearing these costs. If SCA 12 passes the legislature, it would still go on a statewide ballot for voter approval there, and then each local ballot measure must be voter approved with 55% of the vote in order to be successful. This is a critical change that will help us adequately fund firefighting across the state. We are not doing that now. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars in just a few weeks, as we did last June and July, and our budget can't bear it. I would ask for your support, and with me today, as I said, is San Diego County Fire Chief from the San Miguel District, Augie Guillo. Chief Mark Baker is with us as well, and Chief Mike McMurdy from Scotts Valley Fire Protection District, and I think also Brian West, City of Davis firefighter, is joining us. And I'd like Chief Guillo to open the remarks, if you'll permit that, Madam Chair.
Well, thank you for having us, and thank you, Senator Keogh, for calling us. Anytime that you call us and we can help out in the decision-making process, we're more than happy to change our schedules and be here for you. I almost feel like I don't have to really speak after hearing Senator Keogh's introduction to her bill. We fully support not only her efforts but the bill, because it's very difficult right now for local government and fire districts as well as cities or local government to bring the funding in to provide the level of resources we need to protect our citizens. And another thing that happens when you've got this 2/3 majority vote and we do go out and fail, then all of a sudden we're put in a position where we have to start paring back our resources. We're in that position right now as a fire service across the state of California, including the state of California with CAL FIRE more than likely. So what happens? With the 2/3 majority vote, we go out and try, and we spend local dollars from local government to try to get that vote. And we fail by 2 and 3 percentage points. Last November in San Diego County, we went out for this. It was $1 a week is what we were pitching it as. We had a good organized effort. People have been telling us for decades in San Diego County, you need to get your act together. You need to regionalize fire service. You need to come together with the county of San Diego, the city of San Diego, the fire districts, and not be parochial about it. Get together and start forming a regional fire agency. We did it. Took 2 major fires, 2003 and 2007, where we lost only 3,000 homes, hundreds of thousands of acres, unfortunately a lot of lives, including firefighters. But we got together, we galvanized around regionalization of the fire service. We got organized, we went out and pitched Proposition A. It failed. We got 63.4% of the vote. And anywhere else, that would be considered a win. We failed. With a 55% vote, we would have won. And now today, with the decline in property tax values, with the decline in sales tax revenues to the cities, both cities and fire districts are tremendously affected. And with a 2/3 majority vote requirement, when we go out for other ballot measures, we lose. And it's not just that local fire department that loses, whether it's a district or a city. The region loses, the state of California loses. If we can't afford to go out and secure 55% as a winning vote for these initiatives, then we lose boots on the ground. We lose these guys that go out and not only fight the large major fires, but respond to the medical aid emergencies and have their own surge protection in their own geographical areas. But we lose the boots on the ground for regional mutual aid and for state mutual aid. And what makes California great in emergency services is that we work so well as a state. It's damn near seamless. But you can't do it without firefighters. You can't do it without infrastructure. You can't do it without airplanes, and all of that takes money. And a 55% vote with SCA 12 will be a tremendous help to local, regional, and state government so we can keep up our firefighting efforts for you and the people you serve.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much. And if I could ask the other chiefs to maybe just stay within a minute or so. It was very eloquently stated, I think.
Mark, go ahead.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Mark Baker, Fire Chief Lakeside. Lakeside's in the east suburban county of San Diego. I'm also past president of Fire District Association of California. And presently today I'm representing San Diego County Fire Districts Association as their fire chief. 2003, the Cedar Fire impacted San Diego County. In Lakeside, we suffered greatly. We lost over 30,000 acres, destroyed over 300 homes, and most tragically of all, we lost 5 lives in Lakeside. We're in full support, and we thank Senator Keogh for inviting us here today of her bill, SCA 12. An important component of this legislation is the no supplanting of existing funds. This protects and enhances our fire services. This legislation supports the post-Prop 13 fire districts, which there are many. Most of the post-Prop 13 fire districts are solely supported by special taxes. This bill will enable them to get adequate funding for their communities. In San Diego County, over the last 18 years, 9 jurisdictions have gone out 17 times to the ballot to only have lost in supporting revenue generations for their districts. Yet all 17 times they received over 55% of the vote, some as high as 65% of the vote. The community of the San Diego Rural Fire Protection District in 1992 received 65%. In 2000, the community of Boulevard received 65%. In 2000, also, the community and fire district of Campo received 65.97% of the vote, only to lose their petition to enhance their revenue system. Fire districts implore that this committee approve and support this legislation. Where we can support the premise of Proposition 13 in that 2/3 of the electric are needed to impose upon 1/3 of the electric general taxes, we ask the question, is it right for only a minority, 34% of the electric, to impose upon the vast majority, 66% of the electric, to keep them from improving their local fire protection and paramedic services? So we look forward to this committee's support on this bill.
Thank you. I think that last sentence was actually going to be part of a great debate in the state on many levels as we move forward.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the opportunity to address the committee this morning. My name is Mike McMurray. I'm the Fire Chief in Scotts Valley Fire District in Santa Cruz County. I'm also the Legislative Committee Chair for the Fire Districts Association of California. This amendment would still require the supermajority of 55% for approval, which is consistent with what we have statewide already for schools. So what we're asking the state to do is essentially treat emergency services similar to how we treat schools, with voter-approved measures for important support of both our schools and now the request for emergency services. Property taxes are the lifeblood of fire protection districts statewide. With declining property values, of course, that means that this is one of the only solutions that we have, is to go back to the voters and ask for additional funding in these difficult times, as I know you are all aware. We have a number of examples where we've had a supermajority of the voters that have approved a particular measure. And in one example in my own district, we had a 65.2% approval of a bond measure for a fire station to build a new fire station to replace a 50-year-old building and to bring it up to earthquake standards. As you might know, Santa Cruz area is prone to earthquakes. By any other measure of success in a democratic process, that would be an overwhelming landslide of success. And what we're asking for is to just put the bar at a reasonable level that we can achieve. We urge your support of Assembly Constitutional Amendment 12 and thank Senator Kehoe for her leadership on this measure. Thank you,
Chief.
Thank you. And if we could just have Me Too's now, if there are others in support.
Me too.
Madam Chair, I misspoke. This is Bobby Wiest from City of Davis Firefighters.
Oh, that's quite all right. I just wanted to say that we have several taxes that are coming up in the City of Davis, just west of you. And if those taxes don't pass, they will be laying off firefighters as well as several other police officers and things like that. So that's why I'm here in support of this.
Thank you very much. Are there others in support? Are there speakers in opposition?
Christopher Carlisle with the California Association of Realtors in opposition. The voters had, on numerous occasions, have said that they want special taxes to held to a more stringent standard of 2/3. We have a long tradition in American history of when things are more important, holding them to a higher standard than a simple majority. So on that basis alone, this measure should be rejected. Beyond that, the voters have only really said that with regard to education bonds, that they're willing to lower the vote standard. There's no evidence that with regard to public safety services, they're similarly willing to do that. So again, we would ask for your no vote on this measure.
Thank you. Are there comments or questions from the committee? Mr. Strickland and Mr. DeSaulnier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First and foremost, I want to thank the service for the men in uniform. I think the most essential role of government is public safety. However, I will tell you, one of the gentlemen said, is it right for 34% of the population to say no? And that's a tricky question because over 50% of the population has voted numerous times to want that two-thirds threshold. And it's been challenged time in and time out. If you look at the vote of Proposition 13, it was overwhelming vote of Proposition 13. And there's been many efforts to try to lower that two-thirds threshold since 1978. And a super majority almost of Californians said we want that two-thirds threshold. For that reason, I respect the views of the men in uniform. I thank you for your service, but I will be voting no today because I do believe that the voters of California have spoken time in and time out. And then on top of that, we are already one of the highest tax states in the nation. It's time for California to live within its means and put public safety as a top priority, and maybe look at some of the other things that we fund here in the state. And that's what we're doing in a larger debate, not in this bill, but a larger debate in terms of what we have and in terms of our budget. So I just would like to make that comment.
Okay. I have a couple of questions, actually, Senator Kehoe. I am strongly in support of your bill. Thank you for bringing it forward right now. I think this is really about local control of the destiny of local communities, and that when funding is kept close to local communities and voted on by the people that will actually receive the service, it's a good and effective way to deal with some of the issues of taxation raised by Mr. Strickland. Actually, though, I would prefer a constitutional amendment to be a little less detailed. For example, the supplant, improve not supplant clause. Well, we don't know what the state budget's going to look like, and I would not want us to be in a situation where at some point we couldn't use the money because there were cuts made in other ways to existing services. If you see, and
yeah, I see your point.
And also, can this money be used for operating expenses or only for? It looked like it might be only for physical equipment.
I want to be sure I don't misspeak here. So. It's bricks and mortar and equipment, but not salaries.
Okay, well, I am going to support the bill today because it's timely in the extreme as we consider the state budget and some of the choices that local communities will be making. But just as a suggestion, as the bill moves forward, our state constitution is so thick now with initiative-induced constitutional amendments that are then modified by other initiatives. And it certainly seems to me, as times change, very important that we put those initiatives out there to realize the changing conditions of the state and have effective government. But if we had things that were less prescriptive and more open-ended, and that enhanced the principle here of local community control of the services that a community wants and needs, I would be very supportive of that as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
But having said that, if there are, Senator Liu?
I just wanted to thank Madam Chair because I do think not only given the present circumstance of the budget here in California today, but there is a growing awareness of all of us who have come to Sacramento that Sacramento state government has its limits and that people are more responsive to taxing themselves for issues in their neighborhood, so to speak. So I, too, am going to support this bill because we need to have all of the options available for people to make sure that they get to vote on issues that they feel more comfortable with. And this is an opportunity for them to express themselves on this particular issue of safety, equipment, or whatever. So I'm going to support this bill.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, Senator.
Would you like to
Thank you. Madam Chair, the issues that you bring up are right on point. There's a little dilemma here because we want to craft it narrowly so people don't think we're throwing the barn door open. And on the other hand, we want to make sure that, as you both commented, that the power to fund local services is at the local level and that it reflects the majority of the voters in the area. And so we're walking that fine line. But I very much appreciate your support, and we're going to work very hard on seeing this bill through.
Madam Secretary, would you read the roll?
Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Walters, Desaulniers?
Aye.
Desaulniers, aye. Lou?
Aye.
Lou, aye. Strickland?
No.
Strickland, no.
That bill is out.
Thank you.
And thank you very much for bringing it forward. Next, we have a bill with philosophy in the same general area. Yes. Senator Simitian.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members. I think you all are well aware that education funding has been a roller coaster ride for the past several years now, certainly during the course of this decade. And I am thinking back to 2004 when the legislature suspended Proposition 98 so that the voter-approved, constitutionally guaranteed minimum was no longer in effect. I'm thinking about what's happening right now, of course, where we're looking at funding cutbacks that will end up with probably a 10% reduction in the basic building block of school finance, the revenue limit, in addition to cost of living adjustments totaling roughly 8% being foregone. That means that probably by the end of the coming year, we're going to be at a place where schools are 18% underfunded over the course of just a couple of years. The reason for this roller coaster ride is very simple, which is that for the past 30 years now, school districts have been unable to chart their own financial destiny to the extent that they have local property tax revenues that provide them with sufficient funds, that provides them with some cushion. But for 90% of the districts in the state, they are reliant on the state of California to provide funds to give them their basic revenue limit entitlement. And if we aren't able to do that, or if we are unwilling to do that, they suffer at our hands. Back to the theme that you raised earlier, Madam Chair, I would say that this is a bill about local control. It is about allowing local folks to make local choices about local needs. And I would echo the sentiments of Senator Liu. My view is that the taxpayers I talk to are far more comfortable about voting an additional dollar if they know where it's going, what it's for, that if they have guarantees and accountability at the local level, and if typically they know that there is some time limit to the expenditure of those funds. That is what has prompted me to put before you a measure that says 55% for local school parcel taxes. That the reference was made earlier to the fact that this is, in fact, schools, public education, is an area where the voters have indicated some willingness to support a 55% threshold. A decade ago, it took 2/3 to get a school bond passed. Today, the number is 55%, and that is a decision that was made by the voters of California at the polls, who said that when it came to schools specifically, they wanted that 55% threshold for bonds. I am simply suggesting that given our unableness or unwillingness to adequately fund public schools, the least we can do is put this measure before the voters of California, let them make a choice about whether or not this is a tool they want local districts to have. I know that there are some who will characterize this as a pro-tax vote. It is not a pro-tax vote. This is a vote to put a measure on the ballot so that the public can decide whether the local public can decide, by still a double-digit supermajority, how to use their own money to help their own schools. That is the measure before you. 50% of the parcel taxes that go on the ballot fail, but of those 50%, 2/3 would have passed if we'd had a 55% threshold in place. I would respectfully ask for an aye vote, and I have someone who has all too recent and painful experience to share with you, Madam Chair, this morning.
Thank you.
Good morning, Madam Chair, honorable members of the committee. Thank you for having me today to testify in support of SCA 6. My name is Shelley Mazer. I'm a parent of 3 children. I'm a property owner, and I'm a school board member in Redwood City. On June 2nd, voters in the Redwood City School District had the opportunity to support the schools with a $91 per parcel tax that would have provided stable, locally controlled revenue to support our schools and our children. Measure E was supported by a broad coalition of Republicans and Democrats, all of our parent organizations, our Chamber of Commerce, and our local papers. Similar to many of the fire districts you heard in the previous testimony, Measure E failed with 63.6% of the voters supporting it. As a result of this failure and the state budget crisis, last night, until about 12:30, our board cut $6.4 million from the Redwood City School District budget. So these cuts mean larger class sizes, elimination of PE teachers, reduction in library hours, and the complete elimination of summer school for 1,300 children. The failure of our parcel tax, with only 36% of the voters against it, and the current budget reductions proposed by the state will impact all of our students. The 55% of our kids who are eligible for free and reduced lunch, the 45% who are not, the children in our schools whose populations are 80 to 90% English language learners, and those at one of the highest performing schools in the state that has an API of 984. Every single one of those children who did not get to vote will feel these cuts when Redwood City School District opens its doors next fall. Had SCA 6 been allowed to go to the voters and the voters approved it, we would have passed and our children would have been returning to much more favorable conditions. Especially in these budget times, local communities, as you've all indicated, must have some control over raising local revenue to support their schools. Necessarily, when the state makes cuts, schools will experience a significant impact. That's why it's more important than ever for democracy to regain a foothold in local communities like Redwood City to be able to serve our children and better prepare them for the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lupita Cortez Alcala on behalf of the State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Jack O'Connell. He's in strong support of SCA 6, and he worked very hard for the passage of Prop 39, which brought in $46 billion since that measure was passed in local school bond monies for schools. I just have to say that the cuts that the governor has proposed and the legislature is considering is devastating. I mean, we're drowning here, and this is the only game in town. This is our life preserver. And so we strongly urge for your support. You have a personal statement here about what's happening in one district, but in many districts, not only the cuts were proposed for this last year, but for the coming year, it's really decimating the state of education as we know it. And it's really important that you consider this proposal because, again, it's the only game in town. It's the only life. It's a life preserver. That the only thing we have to grasp onto. So we strongly urge your support on this.
Dave Allrath, representing Small School Districts Association. You've heard the reasons why. As the Senator said, this is not a tax increase. It is simply an opportunity for the citizens to decide whether local citizens will be able to vote in a supermajority to provide funding for their local schools. We ask for this opportunity to make our case before our community with a supermajority for passage. Small School Districts Association is in support.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and members of the committee, I'm Trudy Schaefer, representing the League of Women Voters of California. We also feel strongly in support of SCA 6. We believe that local citizens should have the ability to supplement the funding they get from the state to meet locally determined needs, locally determined priorities, without being overruled by a small minority. Parcel taxes can provide a more stable and predictable source of revenue than the state general fund, as we are all, of course, observing this year. At a time like this, when state revenues are not keeping up with needs, we believe that it is important for local voters to be able to make the investments in education that they deem necessary.
Thank you. I'm going to ask others to pretty much keep it to me, too.
Okay. Senator Hancock and members of the committee, my name is Nancy Vandell, and I'm speaking today on behalf of the California State PTA, which represents nearly 1 million members advocating on behalf of children. California State PTA has voted to support SCA 6, and in fact, it is one of our very highest priorities this year. California schools are chronically underfunded. The increased cost of school operating expenses, program services for students consistently outpace the state's funding allocations to school districts, resulting in program cuts and unmet students' needs. And we're feeling, we too are feeling that this is very, very strong. And let me just personally say that in my school district, we had to go endure partial tax failing last June and came back and just were able to finally pass one again in May. But it cost an extra $600,000 to do that and innumerable hours of volunteer hours to get that passed. So it's just critical to be able to support our kids. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And we appreciate the work the PTA does for schools every day.
Madam Chair, Jeff Frost, representing the California Association of Suburban School Districts. We're in support.
Thank you.
Madam Chair and Committee, Bonnie Slauson, representing the Community College League and the 72 community college districts and over close to 3 million students in the community colleges. And we are in support, and I just want to indicate that there was a recent study out of the State University in Sacramento that indicated that voters were in high support of higher education and increasing their taxes to support higher education for all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dennis Myers with the California Association of School Business Officials in support.
Madam Chair, members, Mike Dillon representing the Association of Low Wealth Schools in support.
Sandy Silberstein representing Riverside County School Districts in support.
Deborah Brown representing the California School Boards Association in strong support.
Great. Others in support? Are there speakers in opposition?
Christopher Carlisle with the California Association of Realtors in opposition. We've already had the discussion about the historical support of the voters for a higher standard on a two-thirds vote for special taxes. I won't go into that again. Let's be clear here. This is a flat tax that would be imposed, which is a set amount that's imposed across the board without regard to the ability of the homeowner to pay that. And for that, that's our second reason and second basis upon which we oppose this measure. Again, we ask for your no vote.
Thank you. Are there questions or comments from members of the committee?
I'm just, I'm just very surprised about the realtors opposing a local tax because you folks, the value of homes is related to the quality of our schools, as I've been told, and so I don't get it, other than you're just philosophically opposed to taxes. But this kind of parcel tax is something that needs to be. It has to be sold to the voters. It's specific. It's a dollar amount. There's a time limit to it. And people who have homes and have children in schools have an opportunity to say yay or nay. And in this parcel tax thing, there's a limit of, I know in my district, in my hometown, La Cañada, because I'm 65, I received one of those things. I received one of those things saying I wanted to opt out. So there's even an opt-out provision for seniors. And I don't quite understand why realtors would oppose this local control.
If I may respond.
Yeah, because I've been very curious about the same thing and also wonder maybe whether this is a statewide position or was endorsed by all the locals. I happen to think my local realtors would enthusiastically support this.
Me too.
Right, okay. So,
realtors you represent.
Right.
I represent, it's the California Association of Realtors, and that was taken by our board of directors, which numbers in the hundreds. So this is our statewide position. But to your point, Senator, about the sort of the value of housing going hand in hand with regard to the local education that's available in that neighborhood, CAR was one of the first to support decreasing the vote for bonded indebtedness for education. Matter of fact, we supported it at 60% prior to the adoption of the 55%. So, but we make a distinction between a flat tax, which is what this would impose, and a vote on bonded indebtedness. So therein lies the difference.
Have the realtors taken a position, for example, in removing the prohibition of local income tax locally? I mean, if you don't like a flat tax, do you have other suggestions for local ways of funding schools?
Well, that would be a very long discussion here, but we react to what's put out there, and what we're reacting to here is something which would, again, put before the voters something which they on numerous times have said, we want a two-thirds vote.
Thank you very much.
I just had a question to witness. When your association voted, was it by a simple majority to take that position?
Yes, it was.
Yeah. Maybe you should consider moving it to supermajority. Be consistent.
I would settle for a two-thirds requirement to vote against any Semidian bills. That would be acceptable in my view, Mr. Zazalian.
Or we could do, or we could have a two-thirds vote to approve things that would impose a two-thirds vote requirement.
And all of those things will be under discussion, I'm sure, in the course of this next year, when the tax commission makes its reports and other things. So thank you for raising this very important topic, Senator. Do you want to close?
Just a couple of brief observations in connection with the testimony that you've heard. The story of Redwood City is an interesting one in my judgment, given the margin that they were able to achieve and yet still come up short. In political parlance, a win of 10% or more is generally called a landslide. They won with a more than 25% margin and lost. A more than 25% margin and lost. I'm sure that not every one of us here at the dais and in the committee room today would be enthusiastic about imposing a two-thirds requirement on our own election. And many of us would never have found our way into this chamber if that had been the requirement. But we impose this two-thirds requirement on folks as if somehow that were appropriate. I want to underscore and take exception to the testimony of the witness from the realtors. The history that was referenced, the recent history is that education is the one place where people are prepared to say, we don't think two-thirds is the right number. The recent history is the voters of California, when given the opportunity, said, we think 55% ought to be the threshold for an educational measure that previously required two-thirds. I'm simply asking that we let them decide whether or not they continue to think 55% is the appropriate number for a different kind of education funding stream. Now let's go to the issue of it being a, quote, flat tax. Yeah, it's a flat tax because that's what Proposition 13 requires. We are being consistent with Prop 13 when we talk about that kind of a tax structure. Parcel tax members were, in fact, created by Prop 13. So I'm always a little bemused when I hear this push about flat tax, because let me see how that compares to the current system. The current system, after 30 years of Prop 13, is one in which we have identical houses on the same street where this gentleman pays $10,000 a year in taxes and his next-door neighbor pays $500 a year in taxes. So let's see how they might react to that $100 flat tax that was a parcel tax. The fella at $10,000 who's paying 20 times what his next-door neighbor is might think, hallelujah, I'm finally going to be paying the same thing as my neighbor for the improvement in services. And the fella next door who's been the beneficiary over the years and is at $500 might think, hey, you know, if I can only pay an extra $100 on top of the $500, I've still got a bargain deal compared to my next-door neighbor. So compared to the current upside-down system we've got, it actually sounds like it's a pretty equitable system. But I want to go back to where we started. The state of California appears to be unable or unwilling to fund its public schools. If we cannot fund our public schools adequately, the very least we can do is get out of the way. Let local folks make local choices about local needs for local kids. I would respectfully ask for an aye vote.
Bill's been moved. Madam Secretary, would you read the roll?
Hancock?
Aye.
Hancock, aye. Walters, Desaulniers?
Aye.
Desaulniers, aye. Liu? Liu, aye. Strickland?
No.
Strickland, no.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, members.
That bill is out, and thank you, Senator Semidian.